The Bipartite Approach, A New Look at Poverty Analysis by Higgins and Alexis Kriegh.
So what is poverty? The dictionary definition is the state of being extremely poor, but there is so much more.
What do you think of as poverty? Here's the answers we got when we asked some students at Washington and Lee University.
Cool, so I think that poverty is not being able to provide for your own basic needs or those of your family.
Yeah, I think it's just like having a lack of resources.
So I guess poverty to me would be like a family or somebody who can't afford to buy basic needs and live, I guess, at a rate that is sustainable. So anything that's below that line of like getting basic goods to provide for yourself and your family would be what I consider poverty.
As you can see, all of the people we interviewed had similar concepts of what poverty is, each saying that it is a lack of economic resources. We believe that there is a little more to it, though. When trying to define poverty, it is important to look at if the individual has sufficient economic resources, but the reason money is necessary is to obtain basic needs and to fulfill central capabilities. This is why we believe poverty is the overlap between lack of economic resources and lack of central capabilities. We believe the best way to measure and quantify this overlap is through the supplemental poverty measurement.
Martha Nussbaum defines central capabilities as the freedoms or opportunities created by a combination of personal abilities and the political, social, and economic environment. She explains that these capabilities are necessary for an individual to live a fulfilled life. Having sufficient economic resources makes obtaining these central capabilities much easier. It is possible for a person to have insufficient economic resources but adequate central capabilities, and it is also possible for someone to not have all of their central capabilities fulfilled but to have sufficient economic resources. Imagine a monk who does not make enough money to purchase food, clothing, shelter, or other necessities. However, these central needs and his capabilities are provided for by the church.
Now think of a woman from an affluent family in the early 1900s. Her economic needs are met, but her central capabilities are not filled, since she cannot vote and therefore does not have adequate rights and political say in her own life. It is hard to claim that either of these people are experiencing poverty.
These are some examples of people who either have central capabilities but lack economic resources or vice versa. Most of the time, however, these two overlap and can often be results of each other. We believe that for someone to be in poverty, they must lack both sufficient economic resources and central capabilities. We believe that when defining poverty, it is important to look at capabilities, but these are hard to measure numerically. Therefore, to measure poverty, we believe that the supplemental poverty measurement is the most effective. The supplemental poverty measurement was formed in 2009 to help fill in the gaps for what the OPM leaves out. The SPM looks at how much families spend on food, clothing, shelter, and utilities for the year, and the house that lies at the 33rd percentile becomes the baseline. The baseline measurement is then multiplied by 1.2 to account for extra necessary expendables, such as toiletries, books, and more. This becomes the poverty line for the SPM. The SPM gives a more accurate account of how families in the U.S. are actually doing, instead of just looking at their income. The SPM counts near cash and in-kind benefits as the family's money, and subtracts non-discretionary expenses, such as childcare, commuting costs, and medical out-of-pocket expenses. It also has different thresholds for different areas of the country and for different years, which gives a more accurate perception of poverty. The official poverty measurement, or the OPM, is how poverty rates in the United States are currently being measured. The OPM was established in the 1960s after determining that the average family was spending 1/3 of their annual income on food. With this information, the poverty threshold was set at 3 times the price of a thrifty food basket. It has 48 different family type scenarios and only counts gross annual pre-tax income. There are issues with this with this measurement, such as it does not account for supplemental nutrition assistance programs or SNAPs, income tax credits, or other forms of supplementary income. There is only one nationwide standard of the OPM, so geographical location is not accounted for. This is a problem since a person experiencing poverty in New York City could have the same income as a family that is doing just fine in Wyoming. There are some downsides to the SPM as well as the OPM, as both are binary measures that do not account for how close someone is to the poverty line. The assets of the families might be enough to afford their own FSCU, but they still could be below the median income, which could lead to the family feeling socially excluded or stigmatized.
While we believe the bipartite approach is the correct approach, others have different ideas.
There are many different takes on how to measure poverty, however. Robert Rector's article, Air Conditioning, Cable TV, and an Xbox, What is Poverty in the United States Today?, looks at poverty strictly through the economic lens, without looking at capabilities. Rector shows that the majority of families in poverty are able to own an air conditioner, a car, cable TV, and a DVD player. Rector believes that, in the long term, grossly exaggerating the extent and severity of material deprivation in the U.S. will benefit neither the poor, the economy, nor society as a whole.
We believe that it is difficult to determine the state of a household's finances by simply looking at their material possessions. There is no way to tell how or when they acquired these items. Maybe a family was able to buy a TV before a member of the family lost their job. There could be endless possibilities of how a family acquires material possessions, and there is no threshold for determining if owning a certain item makes the family wealthy. In this way, Rector is just examining the family's functionings and economic resources. Looking at the family's capabilities can show if they are able to sustain their standard of living or not.
Rector also states that the typical average poor American has more living space in his home than the average non-poor European has. The problem with this fact is that it does not compare American families in poverty to other Americans. Although some poor Americans might seem better off or have more material possessions than those in poverty in other countries, they still are well below the average American. This is where capabilities and social inclusion come into play. Although a family might be able to survive, if they still are well below the level of their peers and fellow citizens, they could feel stigmatized in the society. This shows that it is important to look at the whole picture to truly understand how poverty is affecting Americans today.
The New York Times cited a project led by Marcus Yanti showing that 42% of American men raised in the bottom fifth of income stay there as adults. This fact, while it may be statistically inaccurate, doesn't account for the difference between the bottom of this 42% and the top. By looking at it as a scale from 0 to 100% based on income, a person at 0% would be struggling much more than someone at 42%, yet they are still in the same fifth of incomes. A person at 42% may have their food, clothing, shelter, and utility needs met better than someone at the 45th percentile. By using the SPM, we can eliminate some of this ambiguity and focus on how individuals are actually living. This is why you can't solely look at income or solely look at capabilities. The use of one without the use of the other provides an incomplete picture of the life of someone in poverty. In conclusion, we believe the bipartite approach is the correct method to analyzing poverty. With capabilities overlapping with income analysis to define poverty, and the SPM used to measure poverty, we can understand and analyze poverty better. While these are not perfect methods, we believe they are more comprehensive than the ones being used today.
We are always open to new ideas, so whether you agree with us or not, comment below and tell us your thoughts.